Good morning. It's Friday morning. We're enjoying the outside office this morning. We're going to read from Acts 21 at the end of it, verse 37 through 40. As Paul was about to be brought into the barracks, he said to the tribune, "May I say something to you?" And he said, "Do you know Greek? Are you not the Egyptian then who recently stirred up a revolt and led the 4,000 men of the assassins out into the wilderness?" Paul replied, "I am a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no obscure city. I beg you, permit me to speak to the people." And when he had given him permission, Paul, standing on the steps, motioned with his hand to the people. And when there was a great hush, he addressed them in the Hebrew language. And tomorrow we'll read his very long speech that he gives, but I wanted to stop today at this point, point out a few things. Paul is a guy he's a Roman citizen. He grew up in a Greek-speaking city. He grew up as a Hebrew, as a Jew, and so he doesn't fit into the cracks, but he sort of lives where all these things intersect. And so he uses those things to his advantage, depending on what's going on. I have a friend who has a British passport, he says, and an Irish passport. And so depending on where he's going, it's which passport he uses, because he knows, for example, if he should go to Israel, British passport, they would ask questions. An Irish passport, they don't care because they love the Irish. And so, he's able to play with the passports a little bit. Well, Paul was kind of like that with his citizenship and also with his language, and we'll see that here as we delve into this a little bit. Remember, they've arrested Paul because of this disturbance that the Jews caused, and they're bringing him up the steps. And he says to the tribune, "Hey, can we talk a second?" And the tribune thinks that Paul is somebody else, and he's this Egyptian guy who has been leading this revolt. And so, he's been arrested and he's going to be dealt with. You need to understand that Jesus is not the only person crucified in the ancient world by any means. The Romans, anytime the Romans found a political upstart trying to lead some sort of rebellion, they took care of it. And crosses were lined along the road outside of Jerusalem sometimes when they would make these big arrests, so that the people would see the horror of this and realize that it does not do you well if you oppose Rome's power. And so this kept the people in line. And so to confuse Paul for some Egyptian guy that did something, and I didn't look that up, but it would have been the same sort of thing. He led a bunch of people, several hundred. They went out into the wilderness, because that's where the zealots and the revolutionaries go, and they tried to take over Jerusalem or something. I don't remember. I don't know. But that's who he thought Paul was. And Paul says, no, I am Hebrew. I am from Cilicia, which is, a city, or Tarsus, which is a city that the Roman would have heard of. And I'm a citizen, Roman citizen, don't mess with me. So you've completely misunderstood who I am. And he says all of this in Greek, which is the common language of the ancient world, and which would have somewhat surprised the Roman soldier as well. So all of a sudden this Roman soldier has a Roman citizen, and that carried special perks and things. Not everyone was a citizen. A Roman citizen who says he is, he's not the revolutionary they think he is. He's a Roman citizen, and he's a general, all-around good guy. Let me speak to the people. And they say, well, okay. And then he starts to speak to the people in Hebrew, or maybe Aramaic, which is kind of like Hebrew, but at any rate, a language that the Roman probably would not know much of or understand much of. So, but the people would. And so Paul is able to give his long speech that we'll read tomorrow in Hebrew or Aramaic. Sometimes it's called Syriac, but it's a language of the East, the Babylonian Empire and the Jews and stuff. And so the Roman, who's just been impressed that Paul speaks good Greek, is now listening to Paul give a speech in a completely different language. And so Paul's able to play all these factors to his advantage, and we'll see that as we go on through the next several chapters of this book. So what languages do we speak? What languages do we know? That's important, I think. A guy told me a long, long time ago, he says, you need to be able to speak fluent evangelical, but you don't always need to mean the same things by the words that they mean. Yeah, okay, I get that. I know of another fellow who was a pastor, but who got so tired of hearing people's confessions and stuff, or arguments about religion, that when he traveled, he'd say, I'm a teacher. Because he figured Jesus was a rabbi, I'm a rabbi, I'm a teacher. And that way people would say, oh, okay. Of course, they said, what do you teach? He couldn't say 8th grade math, so I don't know how he handled that. But what languages do we speak, and how do we understand these languages, and how are we able to cope with the challenges that come our way from different quarters of society using those languages? Those are things we need to think about, and don't think about them all day. Have a great Friday, and we'll see you tomorrow.